All right, we are live. How you all doing today? All right, it's good to see you today, and we're about to get started with this week in supervision, where we talk about supervision experiences, and it's important to talk about, things that some of our supervisees have been experiencing on the job. As a matter of fact, it's crazy because you can set up to have supervision and have your plan, and then a supervisee comes with an experience. Next thing you know, you are sharing that one throughout the group, and that's kind of what happened this time. But we're not gonna we're gonna share a little bit of that, but we also went into some test prep opportunities, which we try to get our supervisees in a place to where they feel confident about going into the exam, but we try to make it practical. But we have a title for today, and we're going to go on and jump into it because we're not going to try not to take up too much time today. And the title is Supervision. I'm sorry, the title is Beyond Disability, Helping Older Adults Find Strengths and Services. All right. We're trying to help older adults find strengths and services. And what happens is, I don't know how many of you, if you've been in a situation where you've worked with someone who has a disability, who in this case we're going to be we didn't name the individual, but we're working with someone who is 60 years old and has gone through some changes, right? They're on dialysis. They recently had to change their job situation and are just not feeling so good about that. Like, how do you help someone who is having maybe what feels like a negative progression in life to move to a point to where they're back to feeling and experiencing joy in life and not getting stuck? Because it's easy to get stuck. And what age and stage is that where someone is 60, according to Erikson? We're going to get into that and throw some test question or two or something in there. And we're going to talk about it in just a second. So let's go on and get into the scenario that we talked about. Actually, we had a few scenarios, but I'm going to skip through and stick with this one so that we can keep the time sweet here. But I'm going to share my screen in just a second, and I am going to ask you if you can answer this question. And this is what I do in supervision. I have these scenarios, I share them with my supervisees, and I'll say, hey, what do y'all think about this? Put it in the chat. And that's what I do. All right. And so that's something that you might want to try out as well. All right. So let's go on and get into it. So, this is good for test prep as well. Like, if you're preparing, because a lot of them, we want them to have great successes coming out. So here we go. Here's our scenario. See if you know the answer. We have a 60-year-old patient who is recently unemployed and on dialysis. And oh man, I didn't correct this for live. All right, we're going to edit this a little bit. But I'm just going to tell you, it's a 60-year-old patient who is recently unemployed and on dialysis, and they've been saying that they have been feeling stuck. Don't read that, right? And they've been questioning themselves about, if they can contribute, if they can find meaning in the world right now, and they've been worrying that they are wasting their time. Okay. According to Erikson, this reflects difficulty in which psychosocial conflict. I'm sorry. We're gonna go. Which psychosocial conflict? A, industry versus inferiority. Okay. B, generativity versus stagnation. C, identity versus role confusion. Or D, integrity versus despair. What do you believe the answer is? And this is where I have them to give the answer and put it in the chat. And after they do that, we'll start talking about what the answer really is. And if you guess B, you are correct. You're correct. B is the answer. Generativity versus stagnation. Okay. This is the time of life where you are considered to be middle age. I remember the first time somebody said that I was middle age, it was actually a client. Kind of wanted to argue with him about that. I didn't realize that I was in there too. I started looking it up. Yes. And so generativity versus stagnation, I understand about this stage. And so you might ask your supervisees another question, something like this. Okay, since you all got the answer right, because they were killing this, we try to keep them on point. A lot of them already know this, but we just try to keep it fresh. Um, if it's generativity versus stagnation, tell me the age for generativity versus stagnation. Do you know the ages? And then we might play around with some of the other ones and get some information about that. What's the ages for that? So, depending on what scale you look at, a lot of them give us different information, but for the most part, I don't know, you may have guessed it already. The age is 45 to 60. Okay, 45 to 60, roughly, is the age for of generativity versus stagnation. This is an Ericksonian stage. All right. And what happens in that stage? And so that's something that you can talk about too. What happens in this stage where the person is experiencing, generativity versus stagnation? And so we talked a lot about that and some of the contributing, some of the things that we notice in this stage that when someone who is middle aged reaches this age, some of the things that they are most concerned about involve contributing to society. Okay, how am I going to be able to contribute to society? How can I be involved in the development of others' lives, right? And so, according to Erikson, this is what he believed was occurring at this stage. So many of you might find individuals who have reached this stage to get into mentoring and finding things that create meaning because at this stage they're recognizing that, you know what, I've been living a little while. I'm not really young anymore. I'm not old, but you know what? There's not as much ahead. I probably have lived at least half or more of, I may have less years left to live than what I've already lived. These types of things. So creating meaning is important. So now we want to case this client, right? But before we go through that, I want to talk a little bit too. I talk to them about this sometimes too. Like, what is the difference between what Erikson believed versus what Freud believed? Freud primarily believed because he had stages too, but the difference was with Erikson, it was a lifespan development or lifespan stages that rooted outside of childhood, where Freud's was more pocketed into to a lot into childhood. And early childhood experiences was a big thing for Freud. Unconscious drives and shape and how these things shape personality. Okay. And then with Erikson, he had more of a development of stages that went on into lifespan, into adulthood, not just childhood, but deep into adulthood until life ends. So he staged everything and had ideas about what's happening in each of these stages. And the way he spoke about it is as if these were each stage is a crisis, or each stage we're going through these challenges, these conflicts. Okay. So with Erikson, it's good to know. I find it, I use a lot of Erikson. I keep his philosophies when I'm helping individuals. But one of the things that might be helpful, if you want to remember this or be ready for the exam, or you want to help your supervisees to remember it, is just think about the stages of development. Just place that, and that may help you to be able to identify and remember and recall. Because with Erikson, there's so many stages, it's so difficult to sometimes remember it. So one way is just thinking, okay, what would be the first stage? Erickson talks about, oh, you're a baby. So that's infancy. Okay, what happens after infancy? Oh, well, you have someone becomes a toddler. The child becomes a toddler. What happens after they become a toddler? Okay, well, then they start going into preschool. So you have preschool and then you have school age, right? Preschool, then school age, then they're kind of like becoming like teenagers. So they're going through adolescence. What's happening in that adolescent stage? Okay, that's a good one, right? And then what that's 12 to 18, that's usually like those teenage years. A lot is going on. I don't have time to talk about that, but that helps you to place it. Okay. And then we look at young adult, then middle adult, and then late adult. And that's how Erickson covered the whole situation. Now, what we did, and I have a nice little chart here, and if anybody wants to just request it, and I can get this sent out to you. I have a colorful one too. I just added on to this, but I use this each time when I am trying to go over when I'm teaching or I'm in supervision, and I just added this to it, you know, to the other one. I got chat to help me to do that because I like it being identified as infancy, toddler, preschool. It's helping me to even be able to have quicker recall because this is a lot to comprehend. But we go through the ages and the stages and what's going on. But let's get back to our case. Let's get back to our case. So our gentleman here has a few issues, and if you look at the description of his problem, what would you be looking at supporting him with? He's a 60-year-old male or female. It doesn't say on dialysis, feeling stuck, questioning whether he can contribute meaningfully to the world and worrying about wasting time. I'm being concerned that I want to know, are you experiencing some depression? Which way are we going with things? Or is this just kind of how long have you had your illness? Has it developed or has it just all of a sudden hit you now? And then this causing you to feel and think this way. It may not be related to your illness at all. Sometimes the illness, with you not being able to work, it looks like he's not able to work. So I want to talk about evaluate how much that has impacted him having to move from being full time in the work into not being able to work at all because of his disability. Okay, so it would make sense now that you might be feeling stuck because at these moments, sometimes for clients, it makes them kind of just take a look back at everything that they've done with their lives. And it looks like I can't continue. It's not feeling so good, right? And we're 60, so we're getting kind of up there, right? And what's left? What can I do? Is this the end? Will I make it out of this? You know, and so if that was my client, I would want to start off with, evaluate because we always kind of want to look at safety. All right, well, let's make sure that we're not having any depression or God forbid, suicidal ideation, things of that nature. And so, depending on where you are, this you could see this client. This client could be seeing you at the dialysis center. This client could be seeing you in a hospice environment. Possibly. I forget what their rules. I think you can be on dialysis. I don't know. Maybe not hospice. Don't fact check that one. Okay, but possibly hospice, home health. The dialysis clinic, the hospital. Okay, they could have had a stop at the hospital. So you might see this client in a number of environments. They may be somewhere where you're working there trying to get benefits, or you could be providing psychotherapy. So it just depends on where you are, how you would be able to help in the extent of that. But let's look at what's going on. Right now, I'm concerned about his mental state. So, what do you do to evaluate that? Your clients need to know, your supervisees need to know what to do. So, I would probably want to make sure. Again, he's not having any suicidal ideation, depression, anything like that. So we might do the PHQ 9, which assesses for depression, or we might do the GAD 7 to see about anxiety, just a place to see if we need some help. And then if we're looking at resources, if I'm not a psychotherapist or something like that, we might want to start looking at maybe Psychology Today if they're open to it, and see maybe if we can resource some type of support for them or give them the number or some advocacy to get some support. Well, what if this client says, "Hey, I'm not really depressed, but I just, I always wanted to go to school, wasn't able to do that. Just got stuck, and I'm just feeling like I'm not moving." Oh, you want to go to school, huh? You would have liked to go in school. We could start a conversation about that. Or if they say, "Hey, sometimes your clients they want you to perform miracles, and they say, "Well, you think you can get me in school? You can help me to get in school." Well, it might sound like a miracle, but you may not be able to do a whole lot with school, but there is a possibility. I think my wife clicked off my screen on that, man. That's what clicked off. There may be a possibility, let's take a look at it here, that we could find him an opportunity for school if this would populate for me. In my area, they have a program, or used to have one, at least in 2024. I don't know a whole lot about it, but I remember seeing it in the news where they may not allow for you to get a full waiver for your whole college experience, but sometimes just getting into the door helps, doesn't it? So you might be able to help them and say, hey, you know what? It's this program. They give tuition waivers. And guess what? All you need to be is age 60 years of age, and maybe you can start a class or something like that. And my understanding is a number of universities have these programs. I researched it at some point. And so that might be something that you could explore, right? Or let's look, because I used to do this stuff, and I try to do all I could to help my clients to get resources. So I know I benefited from this personally because I have a disability, and vocational rehab. Vocational rehab will actually, or at least it used to, they used to support you with money for maybe a little bit for tuition, or maybe books and things like that. But I just remember I got quite a bit of funds based on my disability. That's how I was able to get out of undergrad without a whole lot of debt. Because of a disability. And so that may be an option as well. What are some other things that you might help them with if they said, hey, I'm looking for some help trying to get in school? I want to get in school. Okay, so what if they said, all right, I've got some other issues. Also the GI Bill, somebody had mentioned that. Maybe trying to see if they will qualify for financial aid. That might be something to look into, right? Okay, what do we have next? I would like to, oh, check this out. So maybe your client tells you, you know what, I'm receiving, uh, oh, I, well, we're going to skip past that one. There are also programs if they're a veteran and they're okay, if they're seeking employment. Let's just say that, okay, he says, I want to work. Let's get to that one. I would like to work. We could go back. Vocational rehab helps out with that. Or if they're a veteran, there are programs like this particular one I'm going to bring up. And it's just good that your supervisees know about it, because sometimes they don't know about the resources and how easy it is sometimes to access it if you just took a look. In this particular program, they were thinking about, we were going to do something with my business, but basically they will send you a veteran or someone who's disabled that's just looking to get into the workforce. And for a period of time, the program will pay for them to come and work for you. So you don't even pay them. And then if it works out between the two of you all, so like with our client, he says, man, I can only work 15 hours, I believe. Let's see how that works out. If it works out with the two of y'all, then you can decide to hire them on full time with these types of programs. And many times vocational rehab will have the connection to a program like this. Okay, what about, so my client says, you know what? I I'm working a job right now. I was working a job in my Cobra, if that's still out. I'm old school. I think that's still, but my insurance is about to be done, and I don't know how I'm going to pay for, uh, dialysis. Um, and the thing is, they're at the dialysis clinic, but the social worker in dialysis is working like 5 or 6 centers, so they don't even know that there's a social worker there, right? That's how they do it, right? So they're working like 5 or 6 centers, so they are not aware of that, and they're talking to you. And so you might mention that, number one, you probably want to touch base with your social worker at the clinic. It should be a social worker assigned for you at the dialysis clinic. Because many times there's social workers there, but if not, there's something that I want you to keep in mind that you might want to research, right? Because you are 60 years old, okay, and unfortunately, you might not qualify for Medicare right now, but there may be something for you that we might need to look into. Because normally, if you have a disability, or at least it used to be that way, you might have to wait a couple of years before you can get the full Medicare. But you know what? There is this program for individuals that have end stage renal failure, a Medicare program that might help you with being able to pay for some of your expenses. What expenses? I don't know, but you may be able to get the Medicare Part A and B. I think the A would cover some of those services, or well, let me not get into that. So here's an option. A lot of times, sometimes we don't know this information. And it's important that in order for us to be effective, not just as psychotherapists, but as social work, we do case management, we do crisis, we do psychotherapy, we work in the hospitals, we're all over in healthcare. We need to know about resources that are available and out there. But sometimes we can help the client understand, or we can help the client uh, grow better and improve better by knowing where they are here. So sometimes knowing a little bit about Erikson and what might possibly be going through that client's mind as far as where they are, where they want to be, how the crisis might be impacting them may help us along the way as we support them with other resources that will make their lives better. I hope this has been helpful for you. We're going to end it here and we will see you again on next week. Y'all take care until then. All right. Bye bye.